If this video reaches 1,000 likes, we will create an extended and elaborated version of this story. William Jones was the kind of man his small-town neighbors admired, a Marine who had served with honor in the Second Gulf War. He was known for his resilience and strength, but the battlefield had left scars that no one could see. Captured during a mission gone wrong, William endured weeks of torture in an enemy camp. They broke his body, but not his will. When his unit finally rescued him, he returned home carrying wounds both visible and invisible. PTSD shadowed his every step, turning peaceful nights into battlegrounds filled with ghosts. Home was supposed to be his refuge, a place where he could rebuild his life with his wife, Beverly. But reality was crueler than war. Beverly had changed. The warmth in her eyes had faded, replaced by something colder, more distant. At first, William blamed himself. He knew he wasn't the same man who had left for war. His silence, his nightmares, the way he flinched at loud noises, maybe she just didn't know how to love him through it. But something deeper was wrong. Beverly was hiding a secret. While William had fought for his life overseas, she had fallen into the arms of another man, Ray, a local drug dealer with a reputation as filthy as the house he lived in on the outskirts of town. At first, she told herself it was a way to cope, a way to fill the empty space her husband had left behind. But when William came home, alive but damaged, she didn't stop. Instead, she buried her guilt and continued sneaking away, convincing herself that what he didn't know couldn't hurt him. William tried to ignore the nagging feeling that something was wrong. He pushed down the doubts, chalked up her coldness to the distance war had put between them. But then, one evening, he found a crumpled note in Beverly's purse, a name and an address. Ray. His heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, each one worse than the last. When he confronted her, Beverly turned on him with venomous precision. "You're imagining things," she spat. "You need help, William. You're paranoid." Her words sliced into him deeper than any blade. Was it true? Was the war playing tricks on his mind? Had he become the unstable man she claimed he was? But doubt couldn't silence instinct. One night, unable to shake the gnawing suspicion, William followed her. He parked his truck down the street and watched from the shadows as she slipped into Ray's rundown house, her silhouette swallowed by the darkness inside. The truth hit him like a bullet to the chest. The next morning, she confronted him first. "I know you followed me," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "You're a danger to me, William. You're unstable, and everyone knows it." She threatened to call the police if he ever brought it up again. Her manipulation was complete. She had turned the town against him, painting herself as the victim, the poor wife trapped with a broken man. Something inside William snapped. That evening, he climbed into his truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His mind was a battlefield of memories, betrayal, and unrelenting rage. He could see it so clearly, Beverly laughing in Ray's arms, her touch, her whispers, the love that should have been his given to a man who wasn't worth the dirt on his boots. The roar of the engine filled his ears as he slammed his foot on the gas. The truck surged forward, headlights cutting through the night, the world blurring into a tunnel of fury. The impact was deafening. Wood shattered, glass exploded, and screams pierced the air as his truck crashed through Ray's house, turning betrayal into wreckage. Police sirens howled in the distance. The town gathered, whispering in shock as William stumbled from the wreckage, his voice a ragged mix of anger and heartbreak. The courtroom was cold, sterile, suffocating. Beverly sat in the witness stand, her expression carefully composed, her voice dripping with false concern. "He's been unstable ever since he came back," she told the jury, her words laced with feigned sorrow. "The war broke him. I tried to help him, but he refused to listen." Every word was a knife twisting deeper. William sat in silence, fists clenched under the table. He wanted to scream the truth, to tell them how she had shattered him long before he shattered that house. But the weight of her lies, the town's judgment, the war still raging in his mind, it all pressed down on him like an unbearable weight. His attorney, a public defender who had seen too many broken men come through these doors, tried to plead his case. "Your Honor, Mr. Jones is not a criminal. He is a soldier who served his country with honor, only to return home to a world that failed him. His actions were not born of malice, but of deep psychological pain. He needs help, not punishment." The judge, an older man with tired eyes, studied William carefully. He had seen too many cases like this, veterans tossed aside by the system, drowning in wounds no one could see. "What you did was reckless," the judge said, his voice firm but not unkind. But I cannot ignore the circumstances that led you here. You gave everything for your country, and in return, you were abandoned. I refuse to let that be your story's end." A heavy silence filled the room. "I am sentencing you to Pine Ridge Mental Health Facility," the judge declared. "A center specializing in veterans struggling with PTSD. You will remain there until the doctors determine you are no longer a threat to yourself or others. This is not a punishment, Mr. Jones. It is an opportunity for healing. Use it wisely." As the gavel fell, William felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not relief. Just emptiness. When he arrived at Pine Ridge, the world felt quieter, but the war in his mind did not. The other patients were like him, haunted eyes, slow movements, weighed down by battles no one else could see. For a week, he spoke to no one. The therapists tried, but their words bounced off the thick walls he had built around himself. Then, one day, a man sat across from him in the common room. "You Jones?" the man asked. William looked up. The man was older, broad-shouldered, his salt and pepper beard giving him a rugged, authoritative presence. "I'm Major Henry," he said. "Heard about you. Marine, right?" "Yes, sir," William replied automatically. "Don't sir me. We're not in the Corps anymore." Henry leaned forward, locking William in a piercing gaze. "But I'm gonna tell you something, Jones. You're still on a mission. You just don't know it yet." William frowned. "What mission?" "The mission to get your damn self back," Henry said with a smirk. "You've been through hell and back, but you're not done yet. Your last mission in Iraq. It failed. You got captured, tortured. It broke something in you. Your most recent mission, revenge? That failed, too." The word stung, sharp as a blade. William clenched his fists, lowering his gaze. "But here's the thing about failure, Jones," Henry continued. "It eats at you, turns into an excuse to quit. And you don't get to quit. You're a Marine. You adapt, you overcome. So tell me, Marine, are you going to sit here and let life beat you, or are you going to fight back?" For the first time in a long time, William felt something other than rage. A spark. Maybe the mission wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. Dear listeners, if we reach 1,000 likes on this video, we'll create an extended and more elaborate version of this story. William Jones was the kind of man his small-town neighbors admired, a Marine who had served bravely in the Second Gulf War, a figure of resilience and strength. Yet, the war had marked him in ways no one could see. During a mission gone wrong, he had been captured, enduring weeks of torture in an enemy camp. His body bore the scars of his suffering, but his will had remained unbroken. When his unit finally rescued him, he returned home not as the same man who had left, but as a man haunted by the ghosts of war. Home was supposed to be his sanctuary, a place where he could heal, where the love of his wife, Beverly, would help him piece himself back together. But home was no longer the refuge he had imagined. Beverly had changed. The warmth in her eyes had been replaced by a cold detachment. At first, he blamed himself, his inability to open up, the weight of nightmares that clawed at his sanity every night. Yet, something deeper gnawed at him, an unease that refused to be ignored. Beverly had a secret, one that festered in the dark corners of their marriage. She had taken a lover in his absence, a local drug dealer named Ray. Convinced William would never return alive, she sought comfort elsewhere. But even when he came back, scarred but alive, she didn't let go. Instead, she buried her guilt and continued sneaking off to Ray's rundown house on the edge of town. As William struggled with the demons in his mind, Beverly wielded his pain against him. To their friends and neighbors, she painted him as an unstable man, a shell of the hero who had left to fight a war. "He's not the same," she would sigh, her voice laced with feigned sadness. "The war broke him." Then, one evening, William found a crumpled note in her purse, Ray's name and address scrawled in hurried handwriting. His hands trembled as he held the paper, his stomach twisting in knots. When he confronted her, Beverly didn't deny it. Instead, she turned the tables, her voice rising in accusation. "You're paranoid, William. You're seeing things that aren't there. You need help." Her words were like poison, making him question himself. Was it the PTSD? Was his mind playing tricks on him? But deep down, in the pit of his gut, he knew the truth. That truth revealed itself in the cruelest way. One night, as Beverly thought him fast asleep, she slipped out of the house. Unable to ignore the sinking feeling in his chest, William followed. He parked his truck down the block and watched as she disappeared into Ray's house. The sight was a dagger to his heart. The next morning, she confronted him, her voice cold as steel. "I know you followed me," she said. "You're a danger to me, William. You're unstable, and everyone knows it." She threatened to call the police if he ever brought up Ray again. The betrayal, the manipulation, it was too much. Something inside him snapped. That evening, with his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, William drove to Ray's house. The thought of them together, laughing, mocking him, was unbearable. Rage clouded his vision. His foot slammed down on the gas pedal. The roar of the engine was deafening, followed by the crash of metal and the shattering of glass as his truck plowed through the walls of Ray's house. The aftermath was chaos. Police sirens pierced the night as neighbors emerged, wide-eyed and whispering. William stumbled out of the wreckage, his voice raw with anger and heartbreak. In the courtroom, he sat motionless, his once proud Marine posture reduced to a hollow shell. Beverly sat among the spectators, her expression carefully composed, her voice dripping with false concern. "He's been unstable ever since he came back," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "I tried to help him, but he wouldn't listen." She played the role of the wounded wife flawlessly, and William, lost in his own pain, could do little to fight back. His public defender argued that his actions were the result of untreated PTSD, worsened by his wife's infidelity. "Your Honor," the attorney pleaded, "Mr. Jones is not a criminal. He is a veteran who served his country with honor, only to return home to betrayal and abandonment. His actions, while severe, were not born out of malice but out of deep psychological pain. He needs help, not punishment." The judge, an older man who had seen many struggling veterans before, studied William carefully. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm yet measured. "What you did was reckless, Mr. Jones. It put lives at risk. However, I cannot ignore the circumstances that led to this moment. You are a man who gave everything for your country and received very little in return." A hush fell over the courtroom. "I will not send you to prison," the judge continued. "Instead, I am sentencing you to long-term care at Pine Ridge Mental Health Facility, a center specializing in helping veterans like yourself." William barely registered the words. He had expected punishment, not an opportunity for healing. When he arrived at Pine Ridge, he felt like a prisoner in a different kind of cage. The facility was quiet, tucked away deep in the woods, far from the judgmental eyes of his town. The other patients bore the same haunted looks he did. For weeks, he barely spoke, lost in the darkness of his own mind. Then, he met Major Henry. The older man exuded confidence, his sharp gaze cutting through William's silence. "You're still on a mission, Jones," he said one day, his voice gravelly and unshaken. "You just don't know it yet." Henry introduced him to a team, former Marines, men who had been discarded by the system but still had fight left in them. "You want closure?" Henry asked one night. "Real closure. You don't let the system fix things. You take it." And so, they planned. Ray's operation would crumble, his empire reduced to ash. No bloodshed, just destruction. A message. The night of the mission was like slipping into an old skin. The precision, the teamwork, it was as if they were back in the field. Explosives leveled Ray's stash house, his runners scattered like rats. When they found him, trembling in his basement, William stood over him, his voice steady. "You took everything from me, Ray. Now it's your turn." By morning, Ray was arrested, his crimes laid bare. His empire was nothing but smoldering ruins. Months later, William walked out of Pine Ridge a free man, his divorce finalized. He had expected Beverly to fight, but she never did. Maybe she knew she had already lost. Maybe she understood that William Jones was not a man to be broken. As he stepped out into the world, the weight in his chest finally lifted. He was free. Somewhere in a quiet room, Major Henry sat alone, staring at a worn photograph of his son, the boy he had lost, the battle he had failed to fight. He saluted the picture, his voice steady for the first time in years. "Mission accomplished, son." Dear listeners, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.